and welcome to another episode of At No Small Distance. Currently at Ribblehead railway station, having just left the Settle-Carlisle train, and after a little sequence of South Pennines routes, I'm taking to the Yorkshire Dales for a Friday outing of the two peaks, that is Whernside and Ingleborough. The weather looks pretty good. It's about 3 Celsius here, with quite a brisk and nippy northwesterly wind. As I'm just loosening my legs after the train journey, I'll just twirl round. That's Whernside behind, with a decent amount of snow. Let's go. The magnificent Ribblehead viaduct, built I think 1870s perhaps. There was a time in the 80s when this viaduct was falling into disrepair. People said it was unsafe, and the line itself was on the brink of being scrapped. They said there wasn't a need for a Midland line when we had the East Coast and West Coast lines. What a loss that would have been. Thankfully that decision was reversed. The necessary repair work was carried out, and we have this still active, magnificent service that runs Leeds, Settle-Carlisle. Today's timetable means I have around 5.5 hours to get to Horton-in-Ribblesdale for the return train. This two peaks circuit is around 15 miles, so if I can average a good striding pace, 3 miles an hour or so, with a few stops here and there, that should be fine. So I'm steadily gaining height on this very popular track. Whernside still looking impressive. There's quite a lot of snow and ice hanging around. I'm guessing the temperatures now are somewhere close to freezing. At some point I'll probably have to get the trekking poles out, certainly for the descent, for stability. In which case I'll switch to a hands-free again, using the head harness. But for now, just bask in the alpenglow of Whernside. Snow patches are getting more extensive as I gain height. The wind's appreciable. I hope the audio is usable. It's funny that this is obviously part of the famous Three Peaks of Yorkshire, and if you came here at summer on a Saturday, it would be nose to tail with challenge walkers taking on the Three Peaks. There are lots of big organised charity events now that base themselves on Horton or Chapel-le-Dale, and they raise money in a kind of London Marathon way, and it means that, you know, for 4 or 5 months at the weekend this area is immensely popular. And yet now on this Friday in December. I think I've seen 2 people so far. Okay. Halfway down Whernside, and I'm just stopping for a coffee, and well, a bit of a rethink, I suppose. I'm sort of catching my thoughts. Whernside got very serious very quickly. I would guess beyond about 1,700 feet, 500 meters. The ice was like glass, which is hard. The snow was, I can only describe it as continental neve, just freeze thaw. It wasn't breaking through at all. Without trekking poles, I would have been completely lost. It's not helped by yesterday. I got my sort of winter hiking boots soaked on Midgley Moor, and today I've dug out my B boots. They're just that little bit bendier and a little bit less grip than my main ones, and it means that I really struggle to kick steps in that kind of hard snow. If I'd have, again, hindsight, I would have got my Mindel super cracks, the sort of alpine mountaineering boots from the old days. They wouldn't have been out of place. I could have done with some kind of shoe plates, if not crampons, but certainly shoe plates. It was thought-provoking, and time just ran away from me. I did it safely, but yeah, the time just completely ran away. It's 1 o'clock now. As I say, I'm about halfway down Whernside, so I'm left with the decision now. If I have to face more of the same on Ingleborough, on that dark face behind me, I'm looking at a lot of torchlit mileage to finish, I think. Well, it's like a different day here. I'm down at around 1,000 feet now, I think, and I've got the track to Winterscales on my left, or I go right and onto the hill in, and then Ingleborough. It's just leaving 1:15. I think from here to Hill Inn, I could probably do in about 15 minutes. Ingleborough normally I could do in an hour, which would take me to about 2:30 or just a little bit after. But then I'm not sure about the descent to Horton from there. If there's anything like the ice and old snow that I faced on Whernside, then no, it's gonna be too thrilling for me. So yeah, how's about a nice walk through the meadows back to Winterscales? Good idea. One of the things that I said in the first video on this channel, the 9 Standards rig, was coming back at this age with this fitness. I have to resist the temptation to compete with my former self. I have to not ask what would I have done in the 90s, but what's the best decision for 2021. Ah dear. Right, I hope the sound wasn't too shocking there. Looked like some kind of trainer jet. So resisting the temptation to compete with my 90s self. When I turned left for Winterscales instead of right for Ingleborough, it felt like a defeat. You know, I felt as I was beaten there, and maybe I was, and maybe, well, certainly 90s me would have gone on. Maybe even 2022 me would go on. but 2021 me didn't, and I think I can live with that. Looking at Ingleborough behind, there's a strange cloud or weather pattern settling on the top. I wouldn't be surprised if it isn't snowing up there, and if the conditions are anything like they were in the final 300 or 400 feet of Whernside, then it's be very, very slow going. I saw my average speed fall from 3.2 miles an hour down to about 2.2 miles an hour, all in that final section. So the more I think about it, it's a nice day. I'm walking through the meadows and I look around. There's Whernside behind. We should see the viaduct. It's not a bad day down here at all. And heck, if this is defeat, well then it doesn't taste too bad. A landmark which barely needs an introduction. We saw it this morning. Magnificent Ribblehead viaduct. Hopefully you can get some idea of the scale of this thing. Each of those piers, how much work, how much stone has gone into them. There was a small town built in these parts when this was under construction. I think it was sometime in the mid-1870s that it opened, but you can imagine the work and the time with the technology and the tools that they had then. So, let's have a look inside. I have 8.2 miles on my Strava and it's approaching 2 p.m. I think about half a mile to the station, and then I can try and keep warm for a couple of hours for the return train. So a little bit of a difference. The programme is slightly different to the advertised one, but I think the views have been spectacular. Never underestimate Whernside. Maybe there's a lesson there. I'll have one last slow pan before the customary signing off. We should get a glimpse of Pennygent just in the distance. Back to our old friend and Whernside behind. So for this walk, for this episode of No Small Distance, bye for now, see you next time.